It is Wednesday, the 31st of August 2022. September, just around the corner. Literally tomorrow we kick off a new month, and we are back here on the 5th Division podcast covering what has been an incredible start to the National League season. Great football, some incredible goals, some naff defending, loads of red cards. I mean, it's exactly what you expect from a division like the National League. Lots of discussions going on about streaming. I won't be getting into those this week, by the way. I think that could basically be a podcast in itself, but we'll see. My name's James Richards. I'm here with Nathan Radcliffe, Oldham Athletics' biggest fan, although he's enjoying the National League. It's been a decent week, 4 points for the Latics. And just a reminder, this podcast is brought to you in association with The Big Step. There is an excessive amount of gambling advertising within football, and The Big Step do great work highlighting this and also highlighting the dangers and damage gambling does to people's lives. And if you want any example of this, we mentioned it on the D3D4 Football podcast this week, but it is worth just bringing to your attention why we support The Big Step's work, because we saw Everton tweet out something ridiculous where they are sponsored by a betting firm whose name I shall not mention on here because I'm not giving them any promotion. But they essentially put out a tweet saying, if you have spent $2,500 in the last 7 days with us in gambling, we'll give you a $10 free bet. I mean, toxic, rubbish, luring people in, awful thing to put out, and especially for a club like Everton to have that as something they're officially partnered with is disgraceful. But then just across the Mersey, in Birkenhead, you had the Tranmere owner refusing to have any betting sponsorship, advertising or partners when they all came calling for their big game against Newcastle. So huge shout out to Mark and Nicola Palace for being such good owners, conscientious owners, and putting their fans' welfare first. Right, let's jump into the podcast because it is Bank Holiday blockbuster weekend, 2 matches for every team, and we're going to start as we did a couple of weeks ago when there's back-to-back games. We're going to look at the winners and losers of this period, and we're going to start with Maidstone United this week because 6 points from them over the bank holiday, beating Torquay 1-0, a late James Alabi goal, and then beating Aldershot 3-1 away in a blitz of a second-half performance from the Stones again there. Absolutely amazing performance this week from them. Loads to talk about. I mean, they're just a team that work extremely hard. They've got very dangerous players in key positions. A player like Regan Booty, not someone I was particularly aware of before we started doing National League coverage, but he has got a great range of passing. And he sat in the deep role, especially against Aldershot, and could splay the passes around to their wide men. They were playing like a 4-2-3-1. And Josh Fawole, I think that's how you pronounce it, was on the left-hand side, and Christy Patterson, a player to keep an eye on, who got 2 assists in this game, he was on the right, and they destroyed Aldershot, these guys, with their pace, with their trickery, the goals coming, 2 assists for Patterson in this game, good crosses, both of them. You had Regan Booty obviously getting on the score sheet first with the penalty, then Jack Barnum scored just 2 minutes later, so the penalty was on 49 minutes. Barnum scored on 51, and then on 54, Bivish Goering made it 3-0. Justin Almazor got a goal back immediately. To be fair, an absolutely fantastic strike.
Yeah.
But Maidstone, a very good week, Nathan, for them.
Yeah, I mean, especially that Aldershot game. It's very much like, I don't know if anyone played FIFA where you just sort of changed the sliders a bit. It's literally for that 7-minute period, the game just went into overdrive, goal here and there, and then it just turned it back down and stuff like that. Like you said, the goals, what was it, 48 minutes, 51, 54, 55, and then bang, that's all 4 goals, which to be fair, if you stayed in the bar for a little bit too long after half time, you might miss all 4 goals. So I'm guessing there's somebody who's done that. But no, like I said, both the crosses from Patterson as well. I think both the near identical goals. I think for Maidstone, both of their identical goals in addition to the penalty. But I think as well, you've got to say Justin Amolzo. He's in space, he's got a bit of time with it, but bloody hell, it's a very good finish, I must say. Only a consolation goal, and nice goals don't win you points, but it is a very, very good goal for them. And I think he's a player who obviously will do things for them this season. Obviously, Aldershot obviously struggled to start the season along with a few other sides, but yeah, I think credit's got to go to Maidstone. They've had a very good week. 6 points, you can't complain with that, and now up to 10th in the table.
Yeah, absolutely. Rode their luck in the first half at home to Torquay. Much better second half, really dominated much of the second 45. And Hakan Hayrettin is a really down-to-earth kind of manager. He doesn't let praise get on top of him. I think it's easy to laud teams like Maidstone when they do well over a short period, but he's very much focused on a game-by-game basis. Doesn't want his players to drop off the pace. When asked about Christy Patterson, he's saying he's got to do that every week to keep the shirt, because there are players currently out through injury who could come back and easily kick him out of the team. So it's good to see he's keeping everyone on their toes. Big shout out as well to Jack Corley, the centre back. He's aerially dominant. I think he's about the fourth in the aerial duels won this season, but he's got 50 second balls won, which is a high for the National League already this season. He's been excellent, and they've just been a really good team, a really good week. Maidstone getting 6 points from a possible 6 over the bank holiday. They were joined by Chesterfield in this feat, who beat Barnet 3-1. I think that was on the Friday night, and then they obviously beat Altrincham 2-1. Really good performance against Barnet. Jeff Kim was absolutely unplayable. I mean, he's been a great player for much of his career, the ex-Bolton guy. You actually did an interview with him for D5 last season, didn't you?
Yeah, that was the first ever episode, I think. That was like, I think it might have been the season before, August 2020, I want to say, I think it was. But yeah, he was very good to speak to. Obviously, that was when he was with Halifax. But yeah, he's had a very good, sort of nailed himself down now in the National League. I think, sort of 3 or 4 seasons now. But yeah, very, very good player. Like I said, I think the tweet you put out about him, obviously, that he did for his game against Barnet and stuff like that. Yeah, very, very good player. And obviously very good to speak to.
His right foot is just outrageous.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the crosses he gets in, the whip on them, he created havoc at times in that game against Barnet. It was absolutely brilliant. Obviously, Ollie Banks getting the game. His first goal, 2 minutes in. Not great defending from a set piece, but Chesterfield will take that early on. They needed an early goal. To be fair, Sean Shields did pull a goal back for Barnet, making it 1-1 on the 17th minute. He's quietly having a very good season, would score in their win, their televised win against. Who are they playing on TV? I've just gone blank out of my head. Eastleigh, wasn't it? That's it. Yeah, good.
That's Eastleigh. I had it in my head as well for cause.
He scored a couple of crackers actually. His finish against Chesterfield's excellent. His goal against Eastleigh was equally as impressive. So he's had a really good week, Sean Shields, for Barnet. But then Akwasi Asante made it 2-1, and then great to see Kabongo Shamanga scored. He's had a terrible time with injuries. That really nasty injury he had last season, keeping out for much of the second half of the campaign. He's back scoring. Would score a goal, a poacher's goal, it's fair to say, against Altrincham. Set up in that game against Barnet. What an assist by Amando Dobra de Bruyne is what we should start calling him. He's taken Jamie Devitt's synonym away from him now. Used to be Jamie Devitt de Bruyne, but we're moving it onto the National League's version here in Armando Dobra, who unfortunately in that game against Altrincham had to go off injured. And they also lost Akwasi Asante as well. So 2 big injuries for Chesterfield. And I wonder how that will affect their performances, Nathan, because those are important guys so far this season for them.
Oh yeah, they've been 2. I mean, in all the highlights we've seen, and all the goals and all the assists that we've seen from these guys, they've been the most important ones from day dot of this season. So, like I said, hopefully nothing too massive. Obviously, Akwasi Asante himself having had injury problems in the past. During his time with Chesterfield, I think he must have missed, was it 6 months? I think he missed it last year. I think through an injury, so hopefully nothing too serious, and hopefully getting both back for Chesterfield, because they're going to be key guys for them, because they are, doing very well this season. They've definitely sort of hit the ground running, if you like. They're obviously undefeated. One of only 2 sides now are undefeated in the league.
Yeah.
But I think the pass from Dobra, I mean, it's sort of, when I first watched it, I thought, oh bloody hell, he's not sort of put enough weight on it, but it just finds its way to him, and then he goes through. Then you watch it again, and you realise, oh, it actually got the weight perfectly in as well for Shamanga as well, coming back from, I think it was a broken leg and dislocated ankle. I think his injury.
It was nasty. I remember reading it. Yeah, awful injury.
But for him now to be coming back in and getting back on the goal sheet, I think he obviously could have a very good season. Obviously, if he just puts that injury behind him, which he seems to be doing so far.
Do we reckon he'll get the big 2-0 this season? Another 20 goals for him? Do you reckon?
I think you've always got to fancy him. Wherever he's gone, look at his record the past few seasons. He's definitely getting in and around that mark. So I think you've got to fancy him, especially in this Chesterfield team with the players who are just going to be putting service into him. Like I said, King and Dobra. it's just going to be. If you're a striker, this Chesterfield team is an absolute dream for you to play in.
I still think Ollie Banks is a coup of a signing, because when I watched him at Barrow last season, and I watched him a lot, I was working as an analyst for League Two. He was superb. Like, he was head and shoulders the best midfielder that Barrow had, and I was quite surprised he had to drop down a level, because there's no doubt there'd be clubs in League Two who would have fancied taking him. And he's been excellent. He got his goal, and his passing and vision is very important to this team. I expect Clark to come in on that left-hand side, maybe if Dobra can't play on Saturday. But it's 12 goals in 6 games for Chesterfield, 7 different players scoring them, and 7 different players also getting assists. Credit to Phil Tooley for those stats as he was putting them out in his take on the game on the Chesterfield website. Always liked Phil Tooley. He was real interesting character, massive Spirex fan, great historian for the club, knows his stuff, and big part of D3D4 when we first started. He gave us a lot of his time and wrote some nice articles for us. So a big appreciation to him. He's a great guy. And Chesterfield having a great start to the season. All those Paul Cook doubters, I think, silenced, it's fair to say. I know he didn't do great when he came in at the end of last season, but that was a bit of a baptism of fire. It's very difficult to sort of judge him just on that. I still maintain that Paul Cook would be in the Championship if it wasn't for what happened at Wigan and the sort of the off the field things that made him have to leave the post. He's a superb manager, really is. And I don't judge him too harshly on the Ipswich situation. I think that was a lot of transition, had to turn that around quickly. But he's a great manager to have. And Chesterfield going great guns, going really strong so far this season. Notts County also going great guns. They beat Halifax 4-1. Now that score, I believe it's fair to say, is a bit flattering. I think Luke Williams would probably agree with that. His assessment of the game was that in the first half they were fortunate to be ahead. But they do have players, like when Halifax matched them up man for man. The problem with that is one mistake and you've got players in that Notts County team that will punish you, and they certainly did that. They've played really well this season. They've averaged 62% possession in the matches so far, by far the highest figure of any side at this level. They've also completed 3,254 passes, which again is more than 300 more than the team behind them. Now, I'm well aware, Nathan, that possession is not the be-all, end-all, but for me it's an important stat in that it suggests style. It also means that if you have a lot of the ball, you're not going to be having to defend much because you have the ball in your possession. I think that's important. It means that you can tire teams out. You can, as you saw in the game against Halifax, they kept going right to the end. They started creating some good chances on the counter, and I think that put them in good stead. But I think, although they scored 4 goals in that game against Halifax, I was far more impressed with the performance on Monday against Solihull, where they beat them 1-0. Adam Chickson with a nice goal coming in at the back post. But it was the dominance in that game, Nathan, that just surprised me. I thought Solihull had a good start to the season. I think Solihull, this was their first defeat, wasn't it?
Yeah. Ended their unbeaten run. But I think that's what we sort of somewhat similar, Chesterfield as well in terms of this Notts County side, in terms of just the relentlessness of the plays they've got up front, is in the fact is that, like I said, if you just make one mistake, you've got these players who will come in and will just absolutely destroy you. If you just look at Notts County, you look at Langstaff and Rodriguez in midfield and all these players, Scott, and it's just like, you look at them, they will batter you if you make a mistake. And, if you look at Langstaff himself, I'm just going to read through everything, put this up on Twitter, but I've updated it a little bit. He got 2 goals against Maidenhead, an assist against Bournemouth, didn't do anything against his former side, Gateshead. Got 2 against Chesterfield, 2 against Halifax, and obviously Chickson got the goal against Solihull, so obviously nothing there. I think it was Matty Palmer, put the cross in, I think. So you just look at him relentless, and I think we asked about Shamanga, will he hit the 2-0? I think we sort of got to ask questions now about Langstaff. Will he hit the 2-0 as well?
Will he hit the 3-0 for me? I mean, he's such a potent player. And it's this team, though, isn't it? You can put Langstaff in Gateshead, and he's scored loads of goals, which shows he's a natural finisher. But they were playing good football in the division below. If you put him in the team with, you've got Sedwin Scott and Langstaff being supported by Ruben Rodriguez. That should be illegal, frankly. You've got Aaron Nemain on the right, who I think is an excellent ball carrier as well. He's really impressed me in just the few appearances he's made. Adam Chickson is a good player. He's a solid player. Nice finish as well for that winner. Matt Palmer is again a player you could argue is too good for the level given his pedigree. And I I think Marami is looking excellent as well. Their defence looks solid. I mean, it's just an excellent team, and Luke Williams has got them playing a style that we all knew he would come in and do. And if you look at the reviews he's got from a few of his ex-players that I spoke to, actually, and they just think he's the best coach they've ever worked under. His time at Swindon was unfortunate for things going on off the field. So, but yeah, great performances from Notts County and absolutely a dominant victory, despite it only being 1-0 against Solihull, which was probably the most impressive thing about it. Wrexham have also continued their recent upsurge in form. I mean, I say upsurge. They've only lost, once this season? They got
once, yeah.
Back-to-back wins. A bit fortunate in that the opponents did them a favour on both occasions by getting a man sent off in the first half. I mean, Kieran Lofthouse getting sent off in their 3-2 win against Woking that was on Saturday. And then they played last night actually against Gateshead, who had Lewis Story sent off after 29 minutes. So Wrexham teams should not make it easier for Wrexham because they have a really good squad. There's no doubt about it. Lots of the question marks about this team are regarding their manager, but Aaron Hayden getting a brace, Ollie Palmer scoring in both games this week. Ben Tozer scoring early against Gateshead to give them that lead after 2 minutes. Ollie Palmer doubling the lead just 7 minutes later on 9 minutes. Paul Mullin bagging his 5th of the season. It's not unexpected, but I still think the best player that they've got in that team, and just for his impact so far when he's been brought on, is Elliot Lee. What's your take on Wrexham, Nathan, after their first 6 games?
Well, it was very much, I think, we were saying it a few weeks ago on the podcast around Phil Parkinson because there had been questions about him. But now 3 wins on the bounce, it seems like they're going into momentum. And, as we said this before, with the record they had last season, unlucky not to go up. So now it seems like after some, to be fair, a 2-0 loss against Chesterfield, that's a very good Chesterfield side, so you can't give them too much, have a go at them too much for that as well. But see,
I understand the criticism when they didn't have a shot on target or whatever it was in the second half against Yeovil. That's poor, but generally speaking, they've looked pretty good so far. I think the problem is people are saying most of our chances come from set pieces. Most of them come from long throws, balls into the box. We don't have that style of play that's easy on the eye, and it's a little bit we could do better given the players they've got.
I think realistically, I understand that it's something as a fan, you want to see the nice style of play, the wonderful goals. I mean, even sometimes when I remember the Southend game against Oldham, the goal they scored, the wonderful passing move, those are the goals you want to see your team scoring. And I get that, but for a team like Wrexham, I think their thing just has to be get back into the Football League. So they might have to sort of bite the tongue a bit and go, it might not be the prettiest, although you've got these players who can do sort of very interesting things and, very eloquent goals. You just get back to the Football League. Once you're back in there, then you can start sort of messing around with that. I think that's not to characterise the league as this, as some people always do. It's a league that's 100% tough. It's 100% long balls and headers and
rubbish.
Muddy pitches. That's not entirely true. While there will be those aspects of it, there are those teams obviously who can play it nice. But a manager will do what they know works from their time in their career. Will do what they can do with the players they've got and the budget they've got. And I think they just need to get back to the Football League. And that's what I'd be saying is, whatever it is, 15, 16 years now, I think it is, just get back to the Football League. I say that as a supporter of a team, and I've not even supported the team, been around, obviously, during the Christ how many long, 30 years it's been since Oldham last had a promotion. Is just get back to the Football League. That's all you need to do. Get back to the Football League. I don't care if it goes in off the keeper's head, every single game. Don't care if it's a fluke goal. Would like it to be nice, wonderful football, but whatever has happened, and that's the thing I'd say for Wrexham. But they're getting wins, and we think they're going to be up there. They've got the players to be up there. Just need to keep grinding these wins out. They've got, obviously Dorking coming up and Maidenhead, 2 sides. Well, I think Dorking, obviously, like I said, we'll come on to them, I think, in a little bit. With sort of Maidenhead and Dorking, the form they've been on recently. So I think just need to get these wins going out of the way. And I think, they'll be up there alongside Chesterfield and Notts County come end of the season.
I thought Woking played tremendously well with 10 men. I have to say, they've had a great week. I know they lost to Wrexham, but a shout out to Woking for their performance. 10 men for, basically the entire second half and much of the first. I will criticise James Daly though for that dive in the first half. I think it was I hate diving, and that was so bad, like embarrassing. It was so bad. So I call it out as I see it, and I just anyone who dives, even players of the team I support, I can't stand diving. It really annoys me. So that was the only negative I would say about Woking in that game. I thought Rhys Grego-Cox is they've got these players working with James Daly and Rhys Grego-Cox, and we saw it against Torquay when they beat them on Monday. That they just got great pace, great vision, wonderful attack. I mean, this team can counter-attack you so well. It's frightening. I think Torquay were shell-shocked really, the way that Woking sort of turned it on their head and scored those late goals to turn the game around. Because obviously second half Torquay took the lead, and then Woking just came flying back at them, and they've got a very good squad. I think Woking for sort of what they've done with their budget. They will be disappointed. I was a bit disappointed with sort of how they allowed Aaron Hayden to ghost in, and Ollie Palmer similarly to get in, and it just switched off at the back in those moments, and that's disappointing. But credible performances from Woking, and they're going to be like we thought, a tough team to play against, tough team to beat. They lack a little bit of pace at times defensively, which I think they'll be exploited. But going the other way, they've got a goal scorer in Padraig Armand, who, Podge is a great player. I've spoken to a load of his former teammates. Never interviewed him personally, but I've interviewed a few people who've played with him, and they're always singing his praise. He's just a really good finisher. I just think Woking have had a decent week. The defeat kind of the only getting 3 points sort of hides that, but against a Wrexham side with that talent and playing with 10 men, they did really well. But yeah, Wrexham, 6 goals scored in the 2 games, 6 points. It's what you'd expect, but they did it, and they'll be very pleased with that. Let's talk about Oldham. I need your take on this, Nathan, because I'm getting slightly irritated by Oldham fans in certain sections who are already being quite critical of the recruitment, quite critical of the new owner for not putting his hand in his pocket. I just don't understand it, because the new owner, he may not have put his hand in his pocket to bring in, like a jobbing striker on loan. I think I tweeted at it, but he's just spent like 12 million quid or whatever on buying the club, putting the stadium back into the club's ownership, bringing everything together that will secure the long-term prosperity of Oldham Athletic Football Club. Arrogant Oldham Athletic Football Club. I think we have to change the name, don't we, to OAFC now? I'm not sure if that's officially done on the badge, but I'll talk to Frank about that. But seriously, it's fans. I understand you want your team to do well on the pitch, but there needs to be some context. There needs to be a bit of a reality check about what's happened at this club over the last 3 years. The Lemsgans rinsed this club in every which way. It's not going to be as simple as just John Sheridan gets a wad of cash and sort of can bring in players left, right, and centre. I think there was a reputational damage done to Oldham because of what's happened. I think because the takeover wasn't quite done in time. The recruitment is not easy to do. They'll get some loan players in, no doubt. And I think the other reality is that your owner is going to have to sort out all the issues that they're finding left from the previous ownerships. And to be fair to the Lemsgans, the previous ownerships before that, it's not just a simple case of the Lemsgans came in and ruined it. They, in some ways, put a lot of money into the club to try and stabilise things and did make some improvements. But I just think that there's been years, decades even, of rot, which is going to take time to sort out.
Absolutely. It's not something that's going to be sorted out overnight. It's not a case of something that you can just come along and put money in and fix. I think even a club that, even you've got a club that's just a standard, normal National League club, not anything massive about them, not anything massively wrong with them, you can't just go in and throw money at it and expect to go up straight away or anything like that. So I think for a club that's obviously had the problems well documented over the years, it's not going to be something that's fixed immediately. Signings have been made, and if you believe Twitter, there's perhaps even whatever. But I think even 2 signings recently who came in. Like Mitch Roberts, who came in I think on loan from Birmingham, put a fantastic ball in for Hallam Hope to go and score. I must say, credit to the cameraman on the Oldham Twitter for that absolutely fantastic shot.
Well, the crowd, yeah, that's great.
Of the crowd, fantastic, absolutely. I think I personally would give that cameraman a job, whoever that is. No, but seriously though, I think with that, people obviously Twitter can be, people will get frustrated. will get frustrated, especially when it feels like things aren't going your way. But 4 points from 6 games, I think could have gone a lot worse. I mean, obviously the last minute goal, obviously Hallam Hope we have to mention as well. Obviously getting 2 goals in over this bank holiday weekend. I mean, the last minute winner against Aldershot, fantastic. I think it was a Charlie Cooper put the ball in, a fantastic ball, like a young sort of Andrew Iniesta, Xavi hybrid. Put the ball in, Hallam Hope puts the touch in, and fantastic ball, fantastic goal even. And
it's
even
never easy as well, is it? Because Aldershot are going to sit deep. They're going to try and hold on to what they've got. Time waste. You're going to get. I remember Oxford going into this division, and the reason I'm quite passionate about this is, and the reason I urge Oldham fans to be really patient. I know it's been a long time since you've won anything, but having that bit of patience now, after 30 years of not having anything to cheer about, is vital, because Oxford were taken over before we got relegated. The season that we got relegated, we were taken over because things were obviously going only in one direction. And even when we brought in loads of players to try and keep us up, we on the penultimate day of the season, we dropped into the bottom 2 and we lost on the final day against Leyton Orient, who a win for them took them up and a loss for us took us down. It was awful to be an Ox fan in the ground on that day, I can assure you. But it just didn't happen straight away. It took us 4 years to get back up. We were a wealthy side compared to some of those in the National League. You just need patience. You need patience. You have to have sort of some pragmatism. Your team is good enough not to go down, I think, for sure, which is the important thing. Because look at Scunthorpe. I mean, that's worrying. So enjoy the National League, enjoy all it brings, but just give your ownership time to sort things out, because it's a mess, I'm sure. I can't even begin to imagine what they've got to deal with for a club. But they're doing everything right, bringing things back in to club ownership, and potentially the windfall that you'll get as a club from that. Is going to be good. And the team's not bad. Dan Gardner scored an excellent goal against Aldershot, and then the winner was brilliant as well. I think, you've got a solid backline probably with like Robert, Sharon, McGahey and Clark. It's not bad. Ben Tollett looks good. Freckholder's come in as well, who's a player who's had a pedigree of playing at a high level. If Hallam Hope can start scoring goals, fine. He is a player. People criticised him a lot. I think he had a lot, on his shoulders last season, but he is a player who's not really plays an out-and-out striker, and often played in good teams, and he's done well when he has. So, I think, like I say, just have that patience. Just be, behave. Basically, stop whinging on Twitter every time you lose. You're going to struggle. It's a difficult division. It's not going to be easy to win games at this level. But give the ownership time. Give John Sheridan time, because he's working with a very limited recruitment strategy because of what he's facing. It's not he isn't wanting to bring in better players, and I'm sure, like we're talking about it before, and we won't sort of add to any speculation, but there will be good players joining, I'm sure, and it's just a case of being patient with that.
Yeah, I think as well, the thing you've got to say is one thing that National League fans will tell any club who come down from League Two: don't expect to go back up straight away. And that is true, because that very rarely happens. Grimsby, I think Cheltenham and Bristol Rovers are some of the more recent ones. But the thing that you've also got to look at as well is, just because you don't go straight back up doesn't mean you don't give it a go or aren't in and around that. I think if you look at a lot of a little heat map, I think I showed you this at the start of the season, you do have a lot of teams who are in and around the playoffs, in and around the 8th and 9th. And what you do is you come down, you might get in the playoffs, you might finish 8th, 9th, 10th or whatever, have an alright season, perhaps have a go at the playoffs or even get through the playoffs and end up losing. But then the following season you build upon that, and that's when you start launching a further playoff challenge or even a title challenge. And then after those 2 or 3 years, that's when clubs start to come round and start actually, going back up. And maybe look at like Notts County, Chesterfield. I think they had a bad season, their first season in the National League, but then they eventually came back. Notts County, these clubs are now coming round to the National League after 2, 3, 4 years, and they're looking like some of the stronger sides in the division. So that's something I think for any club they've got to do. But we mentioned Scunthorpe, don't get relegated, because then you're even a bigger problem, because it goes from a 3 or 4 year project to a 6 or 7 or 8 year project, perhaps even if you're really bad. So based on
it's no guarantee you'll get back either. There's no guarantee. It can be very, very difficult. It can be extremely difficult. It is hard anyway. Let's not make any bones about it. But yeah, absolutely. Just not an easy place to be. But everything that's happening off the pitch for Latics is going to be so important going forward, and that's the thing to really hold on to. Let's move on. Yeovil, 4 points they took. The reason I've put them in here to talk about is because they were really struggling. And they kind of just about squeezed the win against Dagenham. It was not pretty at all. Jamie Record scored the only goal of the game, but the second half defending, it was last ditch. It was ugly. It was hoof it anywhere, but they got the job done. They got 3 points, and for a side that I think, just looking at the squad, lacks creativity, lacks maybe a bit of quality, quite a lot of young players that they have in the team. They brought in a couple of guys like Alfie Pond from Exeter, who I think will be really quite impressive if they're given opportunities to develop, because Exeter do have a really good academy and they do produce talented players. And I think if Yeovil can pick off the ones that just are not quite going to make it at the Greshams in the next few years, they can pick up some really good players, and they probably will do that. Very frustrating day on Monday where they were playing Wealdstone. Lewis Kinsella sent off for the Stones after 9 minutes, and Yeovil just could not break them down. And they missed the penalty as well. I mean, I have to say, Chris Hargreaves, he said he had words with them in the dressing room after, but I think he was getting. We talked about it last week, didn't we? He was getting a lot of criticism. But I just look at the job he's got to do at Yeovil, and ask sometimes for what do the fans expect? He lost his best player, last season's top scorer, late in the window. That's going to be difficult to replace. He's gone to the EFL. The squad is generally fairly young, and it's not an easy division they're playing in against some sides with massive budgets compared to Yeovil. So 4 points, Nathan, a decent week for them.
Oh, a decent week, and like you said, it's never going to be easy when you're competing against much bigger sides with bigger budgets, stuff like that. But it seems to be, from what we've seen so far, very much a similar story to last season. What we said with Yeovil last season was, the fact is, they won't concede a lot of goals, but they also won't score a lot. And it seems to be going the same way, again, for this season. Like I said, I think it's shown no better than the fact is the 4 points they have got has come from a 1-0 win and a 0-0 draw. Literally the least amount of goals you can score and concede to get 4 points. So, if you just look at it, they do stick out like a sore thumb, really. If you look at on the table, they're 17th, and then right above them is Dorking, who've scored nearly double the amount of goals. Also conceded nearly double. Dorking a little bit of an outsider. Obviously, they're at the opposite end of the scale.
They're going to be the outlier in all the stats this season. Yeah, if I ever get time to do analytics, they'll be like a dot in the corner on their own. Just unbelievable.
Miles away. They score loads, but also concede loads. But it seems to be a similar story to last season. Like we said, so it's not an easy job. I think the Yeovil job and the turmoil off the pitch that has gone off over the past few years. Obviously around with the ownership and stuff. It's not an easy job for anyone. But obviously, it will always be a tough one for a Yeovil fan when you've seen your team in the Championship, League One, League Two, to now see them in the National League. I think that's the same for any club as well.
They are still the club that I've been involved in, I think, my favourite ever playoff battle that doesn't include my team, when they beat Nottingham Forest in that game where I think they were 2-0 down after the first leg, and they went to the City ground and they beat them, was it 4-1 or I can't remember off the top of my head. I've got the video of it somewhere. Just fantastic. I listened to it on the radio. I wasn't at the game, but I was listening to it on the radio, and it was such a fantastic listen. It stayed with me forever. They had some great players in that season, and it is difficult for the fans that have seen them drop down. I wonder if going into the Championship was a catalyst for this sort of disaster, because it's very difficult for them to compete. They had to spend more money than perhaps they would have liked. It was never going to be easy for them, and it kind of they just don't have someone investing in the team in the way that they perhaps needed, and it caused them to come all the way down. Dagenham, to be fair, put them under a lot of pressure, and they were under pressure themselves after a sort of indifferent start, but they absolutely smashed. Was it Boreham Wood on Monday? Pretty sure it's Boreham Wood off the top of my head.
But not Bromley.
Bromley, sorry, Bromley. Yeah, they smashed Bromley. That's right. Was it 4-1 in the end?
4-1, yeah. And
the really impressive performance actually from the Daggers after what had been a difficult game against Yeovil. Finally found their scoring boots, scored some really nice goals. I think Junior Rice has been excellent for them this season. No doubt that McCallum is going to be an important player. The way he holds the ball up and brings others in, they've had a slightly worse start than I probably expected, but they needed to bounce back from that. Wealdstone have had a good week as well. Although They played much of this week. I think they got 4 points, didn't they? Despite the fact that they had 10 men in both of the games for pretty much nearly all the match, in fact, from both of them. Absolutely ridiculous. That team spirit that Stuart Maynard has built in a very short space of time at Wealdstone deserves huge credit for what he's been doing. Barnet, although, yes, we talked about their loss to Chesterfield, I think Chesterfield fans were very complimentary of Barnet, especially considering the massive improvement they've made from how they played last year. They then beat Eastleigh 3-1 in front of the TV cameras with goals from Pritchard Shields and a wonderful goal from my favourite player, Rob Hall, who just technique on that volley to score the win. And the big thing for Barnet is they remain with a 100% winning record at home, won all 3 of their games. That is the first time they've started a season with 3 wins at home since 1992-93 when they won their first 4 games at Underhill. So I dug that one out, and I think that's quite an impressive stat, because if they can keep winning at home and keep playing decent football on the road and picking up points, they're going to have a good season. So well done to Barnet, and well done to Sean Shields, who I think is having a quietly impressive campaign in that team. It'd be interesting to see, though, if they can keep their best players, because as Collins was missing, Ryan de Havilland was missing as well for the Eastleigh game, which made the win even more impressive, frankly. Let's talk Torquay. A couple more teams to sort of brush over before we finish. Torquay United, terrible start to the season. 1-0 loss to Maidstone with one of the worst second half performances you will see anywhere. But they should have scored in that first half. They created 2 or 3 one-on-one opportunities.
Yeah.
They didn't take them, and that was massively detrimental to their result, because if they had taken a couple of those chances, I think they'd have gone on to win that game. But they didn't. They left themselves a lot to do against a very good side in Maidstone, as we've talked about already. And they just don't know. They didn't come out well for the second half. And the biggest worry for me was Gary Johnson's post-match interview, where he suggested that he didn't think he could get them up for the game against Woking on the Monday. And I just was like, if you think that, you don't say it publicly, Gary. Honestly, that's not going to give the fans any confidence in your ability whatsoever. And what's worse is it's like 5 games into the season.
Yeah.
So you're telling your fans, I can't get the players motivated for the next game despite this narrow defeat in which, yes, awful second half, but we should have scored in the first half. Just, don't say that. And then against Woking, defensively in that second half, it was not good enough. It was really poor. Nathan, Torquay, what's your take on them? Because it's not a great start, and a lot of fans very, very critical of the recruitment as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very awkward one for them, because I remember obviously in the first sort of season we started sort of covering the National League, obviously when Torquay were up there, and they very well, some would say, had things gone a little bit differently, could have won the league, but then obviously the dreaded playoffs came, and then they lost in them. And I think the thing is just keeping hold of the players from club point of view, but also sounds a bit strange, but the location wise, we saw obviously, I think, was it winter, we went to move back to London based obviously on location. He wanted to be closer to home, I think. He moved this summer, so I think it's hard from a footballing point of view to keep all your players, but also a location point of view, you're so far out of the way.
They lost Armani Little, Lemonhay Evans, Ben
yeah.
Whitfield the season before that. They've lost some talented guys, for sure.
Yeah, and it's a very hard one for them. And like you said, it's about taking your chances. When you create them, you can create chances, but you've also got to score. And they haven't really got them players who can score them. I mean, I remember when I saw them on the opening day, and it's like they did do some stuff, especially early on in the game. They did do some stuff, put the ball about a bit, but they just couldn't do anything to have to finally end up scoring. And obviously had Dan Gardner not got sent off in that game, and Hallam Hope scored his the good chance that Stubbs created. Oldham would have almost certainly won that game. I think definitely would have gone on to win. So they sort of got away with it a bit. So. And now obviously the defeats they've had recently. I think was it
4 straight defeats.
Yeah, 4 straight defeats. I was just about to say. Obviously, they drew one first 2 games, 4 points. Thinking, okay, that's okay. And then 4 straight defeats. You're sliding down the table, and they're on equal on points with Halifax as well. So we're looking at that. They're down near the bottom, and something needs to change. They think they need. They definitely need something up top. They need to start scoring goals as well. But then I think it's also a case of. Before the Woking game, it's a case of, it's only 1-0 or whatever. to concede those 3 goals. I think was it in like 7 minutes or whatever. Albeit they were trying to get, they went 1-0 up in the game, but then they went 2-1 down and they were trying to obviously to get back into the game. And then I think they were left way too far up the pitch, and obviously Woking went through and scored. That would also be a concern, that it's okay to not be scoring that much if you're not conceding a lot, but then when you're not scoring a lot and you're starting to concede a lot, that's a worry. So
when you don't score goals, it puts massive pressure on you, because you often have that mentality where if you go a goal behind, your players slump because they know they just haven't got the ability out there or the players out there to get them back in it, and that's why. And then you start playing nervous because you know that one mistake could lead to a goal, and that's the game over. And it's a very difficult mentality to get out of. But Gary Johnson needs to buck them up a bit, and certainly not say in the press after a match that I don't think I can motivate them. His job is to motivate them. So if he honestly thinks that, he needs to step aside, because that's, to me, like, you can keep that in house, but you just do not say it out loud, because as soon as you say that, people are going to be like, what? Why are you our manager then? And
exactly.
I have a great affinity for him. He's been a great manager, and I think the fans really like him down there. But it might be wearing a bit thin after 4 straight defeats to hear him say that. So we'll keep an eye on them. Shout out to Bournemouth, who also got 4 points over the bank holiday period, as did York City. Dan Pybus is impressing me in midfield. 1 more tackles than any player in the division so far this season. Signed obviously from north of the border. There was a lot of criticism of him from some of the fans of the club that he'd been at, and I said in Twitter, I think he'd be a good signing, and I got a bit of backlash from some of the fans in Scotland about that. I still think he'll be a good signing. I know, he'll get a few bookings, that's for sure, no doubt about it. But he's a good player, and York picking up 4 points over this period is definitely not to be sniffed at all. They'll need to keep going. I wasn't sure how they'd fare in pre-season, but I've been quite impressed with them. Bournemouth as well, obviously with their manager Luke Garrard. I'm a big fan of his, and I think he's done so well over the years to keep Bournemouth as a very competitive side at this level. No points for Dorking, a bit of a disappointing week for them. They've had injuries, and I think it kind of is hitting home a little bit. If they play so open, they can be caught out. A lot of the goals their manager will, I think, obviously avoidable, because they just switched off a couple of times, and it was clear that they were going to be a side that will score lots but concede lots. Maidenhead, as we've said, no points for them either, or Gateshead, or Aldershot, who have had a poor start to season. But one side that we have to talk about now is Scunthorpe. Halifax was the straw that broke the camel's back. They hadn't won at all this season. They've been really quite poor. They played Scunthorpe on Monday. They beat them 2-0. And that was it for Keith Hill and Tony McMahon, both given their marching orders, sacked by the club. And he leaves with a win percentage in all competitions of 7.69%. That's worse than our listener retention on this podcast. It's terrible. I mean, frankly, I don't know of any manager who's managed as many games as he did, like 39 games, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it might have been 36 league games and 39 sort of cup games. I think it was around that figure.
It's a lot of games. Yeah. Let me see if I can find Iron Stats, who put out where he ranked, which I really liked. Where he ranked in the history of managers, permanent managers at Scunthorpe. It was quite something. I have to say credit to Iron Stats for bothering to go back and look through all this. Here we go. So. How Keith Hill's stats compare with the other 29 permanent Iron managers. So games, he had 39, so that was he was 24th in games. Maybe that's are they saying it's their shortest tenure? I'm not quite sure of that one. But win percentage, 24th. Yeah, so he was near the bottom end of the lower serving managers. Win percentage, 30th. So he was the worst compared to all the others. Losses, 30th, 69.23%. Goals scored per game, 30th. 0.69 goals scored per game. Conceded per game, this is probably one of his most positives. They only conceded 2 per game, which left him 28th.
Ooh.
Yeah, so there were managers worse than him in that regard. Failed to score percentage, 30th. Didn't score in 51.28% of their games. Clean sheets percentage, 30th. Only 10% of their games ended in a clean sheet. So absolutely, you can have no complaints. I was surprised he lasted as long as he did. But I'm not sure who they get in who's going to change things for the better. I mean, I don't know. They've got to look at I think they've got to go for an up and coming manager who has something to prove. I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah, because I don't think anyone with any half relevant qualifications will touch with a barge pole because of poison chalice. I mean, it's
Oh
like
God, it's not good, is it?
you haven't really got doesn't appear to have really you haven't got like a transfer. Well, you've had the transfers have been made, so it's not like you're coming in
With a
during the
budget to
summer or
spend,
anything.
yeah.
You haven't really got the ownership. There's still obviously other questions over that, and obviously people not happy with Peter Swan. So I don't really know why anybody would touch it. I think realistically the thing for Scunthorpe is they've just got to hope that, like I said, you bring someone in from the National League North or even like Northern Prem as a manager who's got something to prove in themselves, really wants to properly go at it, and they'll just throw themselves at it to try and make that step up from, like being a semi-pro manager, part-time manager to being a full-time, and they just happen to do that. But I think well, obviously we can say about Keith Hill it's not great. Part of it is also the ownership, because I think Keith Hill, his time at Rochdale, was a very, very good manager. I think Rochdale went obviously sour towards the end. So I don't think it's so much that well, obviously there will be absolutely aspects of it that him. He has got managerial quality. It's just a case of he's not shown at Scunthorpe, and the problems at the club leave him now in a very, very, very bad situation.
He picks his teams badly, doesn't he? He picked Bolton when they were basically in a free fall and had all their off the field problems. He's done the same at Scunthorpe. He didn't do too badly at Tranmere. I think he got them into the playoffs. But he, trying to it soured very quickly there. Not only because of the fact he's an ex-Bolton manager. That didn't do him any favours, but he did say some really controversial things as well. So, but yes, he's gone. We'll have to wait and see who they bring in. But it's a really sorry affair for Scunthorpe. They have been bad for a long, long time. I think they finished for the last 4 seasons 20th or lower, something like that.
Oh yeah, it's I think it's they had those 2 or 3 seasons when they were top of League One. That's my formative years in sort of attending football. It was Scunthorpe were top of League One, Bradford were top of League One. They was up there pushing for the Championship, and then a few years in the playoffs and whatever, and then immediately bang, I think it was like the bottom 6. I think basically every single season for the past few seasons. I think I might have tweeted about it a few weeks ago at the start of the season, but it is something along those lines, and it's not good. And you know what? While it doesn't look like it's changing, and I'm sorry to say, I think we could very well be looking at a side who will be playing in the National League North next season, because I don't see how it's going to change. I just don't see it. At least with other teams, you can say, oh, it's just the manager's fault, or we just need to bring in these 1 or 2 players. I'm just looking at it like, I don't see how it's going to change. I don't see who would touch it unless there's a very immediate change of the ownership and there's a big turnaround and they save the skin. I just don't see how it's going to change.
At least they've got a player in Joe Nuttall who's scoring 4 goals already this season. I think that he could be quite an important player for any new boss taking over. And they do have some, experience in there with like Butterfield and Taft, and I think Dewhurst is a decent keeper. But they just need a change of approach and a change of ownership, and shout out to Scunthorpe fans who keep going. Credit to you guys. I mean, it's difficult when your clubs over the last few years been like that, but writing was on the wall for a while, and that's been done, and that is us done for another week. Unless, Nathan, you've got anything else you'd like to bring before we leave?
Just got quickly 2 things, some stats and just something about the Twitter. So just Altrincham yet to win this season. They picked up 2 points from 2 draws and lost over 4. Gates said they drew the first 3. Now they've lost the last 3, so we're expecting the next 3 they're going to win them based on that sort of trend as well. Harvey Gilmore scored a goal against Notts County in the 83rd minute, and that ended a 443-minute goal drought for Halifax this season. Obviously, they went and scored 2 against Scunthorpe, so looks like goal-wise, Halifax are starting to score goals, which is good. So hopefully they can turn that around and get themselves up at the right end of the table that they want. And as well, just in case, not so much on the podcast front, but on the Twitter front, obviously we're coming towards the end of August now, maybe it's even September when you're listening to this. The support on the Twitter account has been absolutely amazing this month. I mean, we've had the second best month we've ever had on the account, second only to the playoff month, end of last season, obviously, which was absolutely fantastic. So I think we're coming up. I've not looked at, I've not updated the numbers yet on my spreadsheet, but I think we're coming up to I think it's 500 followers this month. So, like I said, a fantastic support, and obviously I think, I don't want to sound like a Liverpool fan, but I think sort of this year is our year type of thing I'm getting. So I think, keep going with this type of support, obviously, and just, as well.
Seeing as you're shouting out the Twitter account, it might be a good idea for you to tell them what the Twitter handle is.
Oh yeah, as well at D5 Football. I think a
At
lot of
D5
people
Football. You can follow.
at D5.
Where can they follow your personal account as well? May as
Oh
well.
yeah, well, we've got our accounts as well. They'll be on there. Mine's a bit of an awkward. I would say our because it is just my name, but it's a bit of I've used some Twitter trickery to get my full name in there. But if you just go on the account, you'll see both of our Nathan Radcliffe and James Richards on there as well. But yeah, it's just been let us know what type of things you want to see on the account as well. We're always open to different ideas and doing different things. So we've got some ideas. Obviously, what we spoke about, James. What we're going to do on there, obviously. So yeah, just let us know what type of things you want to see on the podcast or on the Twitter account as well. Yeah.
Nice one. Well done. Thanks, Nathan, for joining me again this week. Thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Hopefully we've doubled our listener count and hit 4 this week. we shall see how that goes. But I hope you've enjoyed it. Please share it. Please help us get this moving in an upward trend and get more people involved. We'll try and get some special guests and some interviews as we sort of move forward into the season a bit more. But from both of us, it's goodbye.